In May 1992, when China conducted an underground nuclear test, the waves of that explosion circled the Earth within minutes, and deep beneath the frozen silence of Alaska, a signal was detected that no scientist could explain. It was stronger, sharper, and too perfect to be natural. When the analysts overlaid the seismic maps, a strange shape emerged, a massive pyramid resting miles below the Alaskan tundra, its edges precise, its core dark and dense, as if carved from black crystal. The data was quietly passed to the U.S. Army for review, and that is where the trail should have ended, but it did not. Months later, a counterintelligence officer named Douglas Muchler, stationed in Anchorage, claimed he saw the classified broadcast himself. He said the discovery was so large it could power a city, yet the information vanished overnight. He told a reporter that the military had sealed the zone near the Susitna Valley not far from Denali, where the pyramid signal had come from. There were no maps, no flight permissions, and compasses began to fail when anyone flew too close. By the time journalist Linda Moulton Howe received his testimony in 2012, 2 decades had passed. She spoke to multiple sources who all described the same impossible structure. Some said it was older than any civilization on record. Some said it harvested the magnetic field of the Earth itself. Others believed it was an ancient machine buried to sleep beneath the ice until it was disturbed by modern science. Locals spoke of silent nights when the ground hummed with low vibration, and of lights that rose from the horizon like shards of gold before fading back into the snow. Pilots whispered that their instruments spun wildly near the Alaska Triangle, that radar screens blinked into static, and GPS failed to track aircraft for several minutes. No photographs, no coordinates, no evidence ever reached the public. Yet a feeling of forbidden truth spread across the web. Forums claimed satellite images were blurred, or deleted Reddit threads filled with coordinates that led nowhere, and still people kept searching, convinced that something massive, something ancient was hidden under America's coldest frontier. And so the legend of the Black Pyramid began, a tale whispered between the lines of classified reports, between scientists who denied and soldiers who stayed silent, between believers and skeptics locked in the endless question, what lies beneath Alaska? After the signal was found, everything changed. Within hours, the seismic data from Alaska was classified under a program. No civilian had clearance to access. Files were locked, labs were emptied, and even the university researchers who worked on the readings were told the equipment had malfunctioned. But Douglas Muchler remembered the day clearly. He said the orders came from higher than the Pentagon, and they were told to forget everything they had seen. Months later, soldiers were deployed around a stretch of land northwest of Anchorage near the Susitna River. No one said why. Roads were closed, and satellite maps began to blur that area under digital snow. In every update, locals watched as unmarked trucks moved at night, carrying crates and machines covered with tarps. Even helicopter pilots who tried to fly near the zone reported that their compasses spun wildly and their engines lost power, as if something below the ground was draining the sky itself. Muchler tried to talk about it, but each time he did, someone from a different office would visit him, remind him of his oath, and disappear. The next day, he realized he was being followed. Phone lines clicked late at night, shadows moved outside his window. He said it felt like the pyramid was not just buried, but protected by something invisible, something that did not want to be seen. Years later, Linda Moulton Howe traced the fragments of his story to other men who had served at Elmendorf Air Force Base. Some claimed they had seen a circular entry tunnel carved into permafrost with symbols on the walls glowing faintly when light hit them. Others spoke of vibration that made their teeth ache and of static that crawled through the air, as if the whole valley was alive with power. She gathered the testimonies, but every expert she approached refused to comment. They said the topic was off limits. And then came the disappearances. One mapping team lost contact after entering the range. Their last transmission was a distorted sound, like a heartbeat on metal. Search crews found no wreckage, only melted snow and footprints that stopped halfway across a field, as if the people had been lifted into the air. By the mid-2000s, the government renamed the restricted area under a new energy survey project, and every trace of the pyramid story faded from news archives. But on old military channels, whispers remained. Men who served there said underground tunnels stretched for miles, and deep below the ice something pulsed like a sleeping heart waiting to wake again. The legend was no longer just about an ancient pyramid, it was about the silence that surrounded it, and those who dared to speak were swallowed by the snow. Linda Moulton Howe had spent 2 decades chasing the story that refused to die. Every lead vanished, every file was sealed, But one night, an unmarked envelope arrived at her office. Inside was a small tape recorder and a note that said play it alone. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and pressed play. The voice that spoke was old, tired, and afraid. It said, "My name does not matter, but I worked in the tunnels under the ice. We found something that was not human." The man claimed he had been part of a joint project between military engineers and civilian scientists. The purpose was never fully explained to them, but the deeper they went, the stronger the electromagnetic field became. Their radios died, their watches froze, their hair stood on end, as if the air itself was charged. Then they saw it, a smooth black surface like glass, but colder than stone. It stretched beyond the beam of their lights, carved with lines that hummed softly like distant thunder. He said they drilled a hole to collect a sample, and the drill bit melted within seconds. The machines failed, and everyone felt a vibration that went through bone, not sound, but pressure, like the ground was breathing. After that, the operation was canceled. Within 24 hours, their IDs were taken, their contracts shredded, and they were flown out of Alaska under silence orders. The voice on the tape trembled when it said they had woken something that had been sleeping for thousands of years. Linda played the tape on her radio show Coast to Coast. Listeners flooded the lines. Some called it fake, others swore they had heard the hum themselves while camping near the Susitna Valley. One pilot reported seeing a beam of light shoot straight into the clouds from the frozen ground below. Radar did not detect it, but his compass spun until he flew out of range. The legend of the Alaska Triangle grew stronger. Aircraft disappearing, hikers never returning, strange magnetic storms that confused satellites for minutes at a time. People began connecting it all to the buried pyramid, the dark engine under the snow that fed on the planet's energy and distorted everything around it. As Linda gathered more recordings, voices from ex-soldiers, engineers, and locals, she noticed one terrifying pattern. Every witness described the same sound, the same low pulse that shook the air. Before they fell silent one by one, their numbers disconnected, their emails stopped replying, their houses empty. And in the middle of that frozen desert, a rumor spread that late at night, a faint golden light could be seen rising from the horizon, flickering like a heartbeat before fading back into the ice, as if the pyramid was calling to those who had dared to remember it. The winter of 2009 was colder than anyone had expected, a cold that felt unnatural, a cold that settled into bone and refused to let go. And it was during this frozen season that the silent expedition began. No official announcement, no paper trail, just a convoy of black trucks moving toward the base of Denali under the dying sun. They said the team was made of geologists, but every local knew the truth. Soldiers guarded the roads, drones circled the skies, and the valley felt heavier, as if the mountain itself was watching the strangers who dared return to the place where the pyramid slept. The convoy set up camp miles from any town, yet within the most dangerous zone of the Alaska Triangle, where instruments failed and compasses pointed toward an unknown north. On the second night, strange signals echoed through the radio bands, short pulses, low hum static that seemed to whisper in a language no one understood. The lead scientist wrote in his log that the air carried a vibration like a heartbeat, slowing and rising, as if responding to their presence. Then the lights in their camp flickered and died, and all they could hear was the wind screaming through the empty white. Deep beneath the snow, their seismic scanners detected movement, not an earthquake, not shifting ice, but something rhythmic, a pulse traveling through solid rock in perfect intervals. The team followed the pulse toward a ridge that locals avoided. One of the crew stepped forward, and the ground beneath him sank, a perfect square of snow collapsing into darkness, revealing a shaft carved by no human tool, smooth walls radiating cold and lined with black stone that swallowed every beam of light. The soldiers lowered a camera into the shaft. The feed showed a staircase spiraling into the earth, each step glowing faintly. When touched by the lens, the deeper it went, the louder the pulse became, until the audio cracked with distortion, and then the feed cut out, replaced by a blinding flash, and a symbol etched in darkness, a symbol the same shape as the pyramid. Above ground, the wind stopped suddenly. The valley fell into a heavy silence that pressed against the lungs. Birds froze mid-flight, clouds halted in the sky, and for a moment the world around Denali felt suspended. The team reported that even their thoughts felt heavier, as if the silence had crawled inside their heads. Then the mountain groaned, a slow, ancient sound like stone waking from a dream. Snow slid down the slopes in long white rivers. The ground trembled, and the pulse from below grew stronger, shaking the equipment, knocking over tents, and pushing men to their knees. One soldier screamed that something was coming up from the deep. But when the tremor ended, everything returned to stillness. The sky moved again, the wind breathed, the birds flew, yet the shaft had sealed itself as if it had never been there, the black stone hidden beneath, untouched and silent once more. Only one message appeared on their final transmission before the channel went dead, a message that chilled every investigator who later read it. It is awake. Weeks passed after the Denali expedition vanished. The government called it an avalanche. The files were sealed, and every satellite image of that region was replaced with white blur across the map. But locals knew something had changed. They said the air around the mountain felt heavier. Radios caught fragments of a low hum that came only at midnight and stopped when the sun rose. They called it the pulse of the Black Pyramid. Linda Moulton Howe returned to Alaska one last time, carrying the old tapes and the logs from the vanished team. She met a retired ranger who had worked near the Susitna Valley for 20 years. He told her the snow never stayed still anymore. He said the ice cracked in perfect geometric lines, and when he placed his hand on the ground, he felt a rhythm beneath it, slow, steady, alive, like a sleeping heart. At night, Linda stood at the edge of the frozen plain staring toward Denali, and the wind carried a sound that was not wind. It was deeper, like the earth was breathing through stone. She recorded it and played it back, but the device glitched every time, leaving only static and a faint voice repeating a single phrase over and over: "It is awake." She tried to send her findings to a research lab, but her emails bounced back undeliverable. The tapes she mailed never reached their destination, and when she returned home, her laptop would not turn on. Only a faint hum came from inside, as if something was transmitting through the metal. That same night, her phone rang. A distorted voice whispered, "Leave it buried," before the line went silent forever. The following winter, the Alaska Triangle came alive. Navigation systems failed over hundreds of miles. Airplanes reported instruments going blank for minutes at a time, then returning as if nothing had happened. Satellites showed bursts of magnetic interference shaped like a pyramid rising beneath the ice and fading again into darkness. Those who lived near the range spoke of lights moving beneath the frozen rivers, golden threads weaving patterns across the snow before melting away. By spring, the hum stopped completely. No more signals, no missing planes, no strange lights, only silence. But scientists who studied the magnetic data noticed something else. Every few months, a low pulse rippled across the North American grid, subtle and visible, but perfectly timed, as if the heart beneath Alaska still beat, slowly waiting. Years later, when explorers flew over Denali, they captured thermal images that showed faint lines forming an exact triangle around the mountain, the temperature inside colder than the ice itself. No one could explain it, no one dared to dig. And somewhere deep under the frozen world, the black crystal pyramid rested untouched, humming softly in a rhythm older than mankind, a rhythm that once awoken could never fully sleep again. Because some secrets are not meant to be buried, they only wait.